Welcome back, guys. Good to see you all again. I've got a very special guest with me today. Before we go into it, if you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, bell notification, all that jazz would be great. Really help the channel out. So today, guys, I'd like to introduce Laura Bolton. And I've been aware of Laura's work for not actually that long now, about 6 months, ever since this craziness started, I think. I don't know how we connected, but yeah, really impressed with what she's been doing. And so Laura is a high performance health coach, educator, podcast host, and truth seeker on a mission to help people reconnect to their natural humanness so they can feel amazing, achieve total freedom, and live their best life possible. Obviously, I wasn't reading that at all. But yeah, that's a great mission statement. She's got her own podcast, How to Be More Human. I'm going to put all the links in the description, Instagram and her website, which is laurajanebolton.com. And so, Laura, welcome to the channel. Thanks for coming on. We finally made it.
We finally made it. We had a couple of technical electrical glitches.
As in Mexico, the internet wasn't great and the rain came and everything like that. But good to have you on. So how are you feeling about everything at the moment? You've been very active for quite a while now. So what do you make of it?
I have been very active. Personally, I'm actually feeling fine. I mean, there's a lot going on, and there has been for the last 6 months. And I think, you know, from a personal perspective, I'm actually super grateful to have gone through the journey that I've gone through the last few years. You know, I've had my dark night of the soul, I've had my rock bottom, I've done all of that stuff, and I've done a lot of inner work. And so it's got me to a point where I'm actually generally pretty resilient, and the way that I see the world is, you know, I kind of surrender to, I do what I can do, but then I also surrender to, you know, to the outcome. So I personally am feeling okay. And I would say though, I'm very mindful of taking time to replenish and taking time to look after myself, because it's very, very easy to burn out, and it's very easy to get into a state of, I think particularly overwhelm. I'm hearing from a lot of people at the moment, they're just feeling very overwhelmed and drained. And so that's that's always on my mind, you know, just trying to make sure that I kind of look after myself first, and I guess practice what I preach. Otherwise I wouldn't be I wouldn't be very good at what I do if I didn't do that. So yeah, it's a crazy time, and I appreciate a lot of people are really struggling.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on, because a lot of your messages are very empowering and very helpful. I've used some of them myself, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But just tell us a little bit about your journey, how you woke up, and how you arrived to what you do today.
Yeah, so I guess I first had a big shift. I suppose it was my first awakening, so to speak, several years ago. We're going back sort of 6-7 years, maybe 7 years now. And I was experiencing lots of different health issues. So I was having physical and emotional challenges. I was just feeling terrible in many different ways and having many different symptoms. And I would go to the doctor, and they would prescribe me pharmaceuticals, of course, because that's what they do.
Yep.
And I was just feeling worse and worse. And so I was getting all sorts of things, from irritable bowel syndrome to eczema on my skin. I was having, you know, anxiety. I was getting, you know, feeling depressed. I was getting ear, nose and throat infections and colds and things like that all the time, all through the year. And I one day went to the doctor and was explaining about my mood, how my mood was getting worse, and I was feeling more and more tired. And they gave me a questionnaire to fill out, which was just like a tick box questionnaire.
Very
And because
thorough.
I ticked, I know, and because I ticked a certain number of boxes, he said, oh, you've ticked X number of boxes, you have depression. And he started to write me, honestly, I mean, it's like a comedy sketch. He started to write me a prescription for an antidepressant and just gave it to me and just told me to go on my way. And it was at that point I just knew within me that that just wasn't right, and that there must be a cause of all the things that I was experiencing. So I started to investigate, and I really started to get into functional medicine and natural health and healing. And I actually discovered a guy called Chris Kresser, who wrote a book called The Paleo Cure. And I went on a paleo diet. I did a gut healing protocol, and I did some other things for, you know, sort of lifestyle changes. And over time, my symptoms started to improve, and everything that he was talking about, right? And it's, you know, it's so funny now, because I can't even believe that I didn't realize this back then. You know, I've had a good education, I've always been curious and open-minded, and I was doing some kind of what I thought was healthy eating. So I was doing a lot of, like, you know, I was eating a lot of like beans and grains and lentils and things, which I now know my body isn't good with and can't deal with, right? And that's the case for a lot of people. So I was doing a very, like, kind of more of a vegetarian, you know, yeah, I know. And it made me, you know, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was eating the healthy foods, and it actually made me sick, and it damaged my gut. And also, because I was getting sick all the time and they were giving me antibiotics every couple of months, that destroys the gut even further. So I was particularly interested in gut and gut health at that point, and how that affects the rest of the body, and how it affects the mind. And then I discovered Dave Asprey and Bulletproof, and I went on to study with them and all of these things. But it was really at that time I realized I had to make big changes in my life. You know, I was in a job I didn't enjoy. You know, in terms of my diet and everything wasn't good. And, you know, I was also very addicted to sugar. So I had a very high sugar diet. And I was in a relationship at the time that wasn't great. So I basically changed everything. My eyes were opened, and everything changed. I left my corporate career, and I decided to take time off to heal, but also to really learn about a lot of the stuff that I do now for work. That's kind of where that journey started. But also, that was where my journey started with regards to learning about the pharmaceutical industry and the medical system, and how sinister it is, and how, you know, dark it is. And so that was really an eye-opener, and I kind of haven't stopped learning. It's like, you know, once you know, you know, and once you it's like Alice going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Once you've gone down, you find there's all these warrens, and there's all these different tunnels to explore. And so that's kind of what happened. And then I would say, so this was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and then just over 3 years ago, I went through another. This was where I really had my deep spiritual awakening. So I was in a situation where my ex-partner split up with me out of the blue, and I lost everything. I had no income, I had no money, I had no home. I literally had pretty much nothing. He got rid of all my possessions. I just had a couple of suitcases of stuff. It's a very long story, but that's really what happened. And that was my rock bottom. That was my
dark night.
That was my real dark night. I was suicidal. I was about to end it. I couldn't, you know, it was just unbearable for me, you know, to live in that way at that time. And so when you don't have anything, you're forced to go within. You don't have anything else. You just can't do anything. So I had to really go within, and that's where I really started to go on what I would say is my spiritual journey, and doing the deeper inner work to evolve and to heal, and to discover who I truly was, because I felt lost. And I think this is where so many people still are, you know, they're just lost. They don't really know themselves. They're disconnected from themselves. They don't know who they truly are. And they haven't done the healing that they need to do. And that was, I'm grateful for it now. I mean, it was obviously horrific at the time.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't gone through that, I would never have been able to go through the journey that I did and to get to where I am doing the work I'm doing. So it kind of all happens for a reason. You just don't realize it at the time when you're suffering so much. But you know, and then obviously the last 6 months has been, it's almost like the rabbit hole has ramped up.
Oh yeah.
Because it's all what you're always learning. It's not like you go down the rabbit hole and then you know everything.
Absolutely.
There are things I've learned in the last 6 months I really didn't want to know.
There's that saying, isn't there? There's only one mistake you can make on the path of truth, and that's not going all the way. Don't know if you've heard that one, but yeah.
And so it's you know, once you know, and then you want to know more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's been quite a ride.
It's interesting how often through our darkest hours and our toughest challenges, we can transform ourselves, can't we? And certainly happened similar to me as well. So just using those challenges in life to as a platform, really. And then, you, like you say, you do tend to look back and think, kind of glad that happened. Not at the time, but I'm glad it happened because it causes growth. And I just wonder, I don't know if I hope that this is what's going on with us as a collective, but you do wonder whether or not we're having to go through a certain amount of suffering because it's going to affect people now in a similar sort of way, whereby they're really going to, you know, have to face some darkness and they're not going to have anywhere to go, like you say.
Yeah, I actually think that's what's happening and has been happening for a lot of people, especially, you know, you imagine if your life dramatically changes all of a sudden, like when everything locked down. I know there are many people who whose lives changed dramatically. Maybe they lost their job. I know people who lost their businesses. I know people who are, you know, super social and really, you know, are really needing, you know, to be around people, and they're kind of locked in their homes. And what that did was it forced people to spend more time with themselves. It forced people, you know, many people don't, even if I think about some of my clients and I ask them, you know, how much time do you spend just being like with yourself, and they're horrified. And I get it. I used to be like that. I used to distract myself from everything with, you know, TV, alcohol, you know, whatever it might be. Like, I understand because I've been through all of it. But many people just they've never had to just reflect and be and really question things and question themselves and do that kind of looking within. And so I think there's many people that have been experiencing that, and I think that also can lead to a lot of distress. And we're seeing this, you know, we've seen the suicide rates are going up. We've seen that mental health challenges are going up. The Samaritans helpline apparently kept crashing because so many people were you know, wanting help. And if I look online at just some of the things that people are talking about, people are regularly saying how much they're struggling. So I think it's a combination of you know, losing things, like, you know, that big change, but also the looking within. And what, you know, sometimes when you start to look within, it's not nice what you find or what you experience, and then you can experience a lot of really unpleasant emotions, unpleasant feelings, and people are afraid of feeling. So we have so many different things going on, but I really think there is an emotional health crisis.
Absolutely
happening.
And it's interesting when you mention, I call them firefighters. You know, we all have our firefighters, like you say, whether it's TV or alcohol or whatever it is. But one firefighter that is so prominent in society is being busy. You know, everyone's busy. And if
Yes.
you're constantly busy, you're not sitting with yourself, you're not sitting with your feelings, you're not sitting, you know, you're not, as you say, just not being. And I think we've created this society where everyone's so busy that it's this lockdown has, like you say, forced them to just sit there and be, and it's brought a lot of stuff up for them.
Yeah, and also to it's forced people to maybe question their life and question the way they live their life. It's maybe forced people to question their health and how well they look after themselves, or maybe it's forcing people to question, you know, people that have lost their businesses. What am I now going to do? Like, what do I really want to do? What do I want? You know, all these questions start to come up, and it can be incredibly traumatic for people. If you've been running from yourself for many years or for a lifetime, it can be very traumatic to actually start to be and to think.
Yeah, and of course, there's a lot of, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people that have broken up in their relationships after having to spend, you know, many months stuck in the same home. But
yeah, absolutely. There's that. And there's also which I think is a big contributor to our emotional health challenges at the moment, is there's been a lot of relationship breakdowns, full stop. So not just with partners, but also with friends.
Yeah.
I mean, most people who, I mean, I know many people who have kind of woken up more recently. So kind of, you know, when all of this stuff started this year, and they're telling me that they've lost so many of their friends, and they've had, you know, fallouts, and they've had arguments, and they've had people sending them, and I've had that a little bit. I mean, I've not too much, because I already had, you know, I was already friends with people who are fairly aligned, but I've had a few people send me, you know, people that I know send me really abusive messages, you know, angry, upset messages because I'm speaking out and I'm not.
What was your post the other day? It was, I'm banned on Facebook, but I did see it. It was something along the lines of, you don't have to announce yourself if you leave, or something like that. It really made me laugh.
Yeah, I think it was, what did it say? It said something like, if you don't like my posts, you don't have to, you know, criticize. You can just, you know, you can just leave. It's not.
Oh no, it's not. It's not.
You don't have to announce your departure. It's not an airport.
Oh yeah, it's not an airport. That was it. Yeah.
Because I've had several people actually make a point of writing a comment or sending me a message saying, "I'm going to unfollow you," and I'm like, okay.
All right, trust taking itself out then.
Yes, I don't like, and they're people I don't even really know, so I don't know why. It's just there's this really and it's people acting out there again. It's
they're triggered.
They're triggered and they're acting out their pain. You know, I had a couple of people message me and tell me, like, people who were friends, not good friends, but friends of old, tell me that I was damaging their mental health by the things I was posting.
Oh really?
Which is very interesting, because what that signifies is a complete lack of ownership for your own, you know, for your own feelings.
Yeah.
And also, if you don't like it, don't follow it.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. What we're seeing is the worst of people, because everyone's triggers are right at the surface now, aren't they? So I think this is what we're seeing with all these Karens that are acting out, you know, that are getting triggered really badly, because it's caused so much psychological damage in people. I mean, the lockdowns are actually, well, it's a CIA thing, you know, it's a CIA torture technique. There's the social distancing, so they know what they're doing, and so yeah, it's really kind of bringing out the worst of people, which is why it's so important to do that inner work. You know, I talk about it a lot in on my channel, and I don't know how it really helped me handle this. I don't know how well I would have handled it, and I still had and continue to have stuff come up, but it's really kind of grounded me and made me much stronger and able to deal with it.
Absolutely. And I do genuinely really feel for people who have literally just woken up.
Oh yeah.
And because if you have lived your life just being completely oblivious to kind of, you know, some of the other stuff that's going on and the way the world is really, you know, is really run, and suddenly you've got this situation, and you are questioning it, and you can see there's something not right, and you start to learn. Your whole idea of life, everything you've ever been told, is shattered. And that's trauma. That is actually that is a traumatic incident. You know, we often think of trauma as being an attack or some like an accident or a really, you know, bad breakup or something. Trauma can be, there's so many different types of trauma, and people are going through. On my podcast, actually, I interviewed a trauma specialist the other day, and she was explaining how we are going through a mass global trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
And everything is, you know, people are going through their individual traumas. They're having traumas that have been unhealed from the past being triggered and brought up. And then they're also acting out potentially, which is natural. That's a normal response to, you know, having your trauma, unhealed traumas triggered. But then that's having an impact because everybody is arguing, and there's division, and of course it's all designed that way. It's designed to create separation and division and conflict, and then more stress, but it is like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, as you said, I am so grateful that I've done that inner work, because I just don't know how I would cope if I hadn't done any of it. It's really tough for people, and so I do have that there is that compassion. It's like I kind of have to balance that, you know, compassion for like, okay, I'm compassionate for you, but I'm still going to share what I share, because that's important. So it's kind of good. It's very important to just be mindful of other people and where they're at, and that not everyone is where we're at, but not let that stop us from speaking our truth and sharing what we want to share.
So that takes us nicely on to the next part of what I wanted to talk to you about, because you are like non-stop on social media trying to raise awareness, and like I thought I was pretty intense with it, but you do really well. And I do know that there was once upon a time where you struggled to speak up and speak your truth, and I talk about that a lot on this channel as well, about how we live in a prison of what people think of us, and it really holds us back from expressing who we really are, our true self. And just wanted you to touch on your own kind of journey with that and how you overcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I, believe it or not, for the majority of my life, was a massive people pleaser. Like, I would never speak my truth. I was always pretending to be somebody I wasn't. I was quite a chameleon, so I would always adapt to. I was quite introverted, and I would always just be how other people wanted me to be, and I would adapt depending on who I was with, and just agree with them. And also I wasn't able to say no. So people would ask me, could you do this? So at work, I was always overstretched, and I would always bend over backwards for people, even though they weren't necessarily particularly nice to me. And, you know, caring what people think is, I actually think, having done a lot of the work I've done around stress and studying stress and trauma, and I actually think that it's one of the most fundamental issues that we have as humans in this day and age it's not so much about caring, it's more about allowing what others think to be more important than what we truly need and what we truly want. And this is what happens. And there's a brilliant book called When the Body Says No, The Cost of Hidden Stress, by Gabor Mate, who's a trauma specialist, addiction stress specialist. And he explains how not speaking our truth and not being able to say no, and, you know, basically always putting other people above ourselves, is one of the main causes of disease. Because what it does is it continually creates this stress response within our body, and that over time causes disease. You know, we know this. And so this is why I think we have, and I speak from experience, because I used to always feel anxious and down but I wasn't kind of sure why.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was, you know, at that time when I was feeling like that, it wasn't like I was, you know, I had a job, I had an income, I had a comfortable home, you know, I wasn't lacking any of the basic human needs. And yet I just never felt good. And I never felt, I always felt like the odd one out. I felt like a weirdo. I just never really fitted in. And my whole life I felt like that. And it really, I really do believe that it's hugely detrimental to our mental and our physical health. And we just don't, and most people that I meet are people pleasers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like and especially in the UK, you know, the Brits, it's like, oh, we don't want to upset anybody.
Got to be polite.
We've got to be polite. We'll literally sacrifice anything just to keep other people happy. And look, there's a reason why this happens. From an evolutionary perspective, you know, from our human evolution, we basically have two fundamental needs. Beyond physical needs, we have two needs. One is to be ourselves, to be our authentic selves. And the other is what Gabor Mate refers to as attachment. So he calls it authenticity and attachment. So you have the attachment is really the need to belong and the need to be cared for. You know, it's like when we were in many years ago when we lived, you know, in tribes, wherever. If you were outcast from that group, you would die. It's a survival thing. It's an inbuilt need that we have to belong and to be, I guess, approved of and to be cared for. And when that's threatened, we will do anything to maintain that. And actually, authenticity is the thing that normally gets put aside. Because when the two things are competing, most people will choose attachment. So they would rather just, you know, a good example would be, you know, and I've been there before, I've been in a group of people and they've been sharing a view about something that I completely disagree with, but I've just gone along with it and agreed, because to not agree would create conflicts.
Yeah.
And I had, you know, experienced lots of conflict when I was younger. So there's a trauma wound. And so then I wouldn't like conflict. I would just agree with people, and it just kept everything nice and then that was nice, because then people liked me and everything was fine. But inside, you're betraying yourself, and every time you betray yourself, you know it. You know, it's like when you say something that you don't really mean, or you agree to do something you don't want to do. You feel it in here, don't you? It's like, oh, there's just that horrible sinking feeling that that's not authentic. It's just not what I'm meant to be. And we see it a lot as well, just generally in terms of authenticity. People online being so fake and pretending to be. Everyone has this avatar, you know, this kind of fake version of themselves, because and when you go to the root of it, the root of all this behavior is caring what other people think. And I lived most of my life that way. But when I had my big, you know, top night of the soul 3 years ago, I had to really question everything and really go through that journey. And actually, it was almost like my soul just wouldn't allow me to be fake anymore.
Yeah, it just got tired of being fake.
And you get to a point where, and most people will experience this at some point, I think, you get to a point where you literally feel sick of not being who you truly are, and just not expressing yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And I see it all the time. I see it with clients, I see it with friends, I see it with people that I meet. And so I actually think this is a huge issue. And actually this year, the year when it's the most important year for people to speak up, they're not speaking up. And this is why. It's this, some people are so fearful, like petrified. And often they're petrified of what might happen. Of what people might think. the impact that it might have. And so therefore they stay quiet. And not only does that mean that potentially the collective is affected, but it also means that that person is not honoring their needs, and they're betraying themselves, which is going to just only continue to make them feel anxious and depressed. And I have this term I call soulful depression, and I see it in most people. There is just this thing inside that just doesn't feel right, and it's just, you just don't feel that great.
Yeah.
And it's not like, you know, severe, like off the charts clinical depression. This is what most people experience. It's just this kind of sadness and just this feeling that something's not right. And one of the reasons for that, I believe, is that we're just not honoring ourselves. And so when I started doing it, and look, I didn't do it overnight, it was a journey. And this is what I want to know.
How did you start? For people that are listening and thinking, that sounds a bit like me, what kind of practical steps did you take to kind of move yourself out of that?
Well, I think I was helped by the fact that I had this big kind of rock bottom crash, because I was forced to go within. I think many people who are not in a position where they're being pushed to look at themselves and to look at their life are not necessarily going to do it. But I think for anybody who is at a point where they're just feeling like, I want to care less what people think, I want to be more me, but I just feel like I can't. I think the first thing is understanding that's totally natural. So just as I've just explained, there's reasons why we feel that way. And not only from an ancestral perspective is it kind of inbuilt into us, but we're also conditioned from young to behave, you know, from parents, from teachers, from whoever, you know, be quiet, don't cry, don't speak up, you know, keep the peace. My parents always used to say that to me, like, just keep the peace, just do that to keep the peace, don't cause trouble.
Yeah. And
so we have that as well. So I want people to understand, like, there's very good reason why you feel that way. You're not, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. But also for me, it was starting small. So it was just starting to, once I'd gone through some healing, because I had a period of time where I was just incapable of, you know, doing anything. And I really went into myself, and I was very reclusive, and that was what I needed. But I think just starting small, it's like anything. You just kind of, it's a journey. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to wake up and just not care what people think. You just can't do that. That's just not the way it works. And so I started off just small, just, you know, just saying, sometimes like setting a boundary. So boundaries is a big thing. Most people can't do boundaries.
Yeah.
So I just started setting boundaries. So I would say, you know, if somebody asked something of me, I would just practice saying no. And I started studying, you know, I was studying literally how to
practice saying no right now, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, I was literally like, you know, sort of researching online, like, you know, listening to people on Instagram and stuff like, okay, how to set boundaries, because I hadn't done any of it before.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it meant. And so I think, you know, there's lots of people, I think particularly on Instagram, there's quite a lot of accounts who talk about this stuff and give tips and everything. But I think setting boundaries is a big one, but just practicing it. So just practice. Okay, I'm going to just, next time I don't want to do something, I'm just going to, you know, I'm just going to say no, I can't commit to that, or whatever it might be. Also just sharing things that you want to share. So sharing, you know, maybe a post here and there. You can just start small. But what I will say is, I actually think the biggest, if I'm completely honest, I think the biggest thing that helped me to be who I truly am and to just speak my truth and not care, in addition to it being a journey, and it kind of it just does build the more and more you do it, it's the community that you're part of. It's who you're hanging around with. Because if you're connected with, whether it's in person or online, if you're connected with people who accept you for who you are and encourage it, it's so easy. You actually feel like, oh,
yeah,
people don't mind me, you know, people get me, or people don't mind me being this way. And for me, I went to a year after my, my kind of rock bottom incident had happened, I went to an event called A Fest, which is organized by Mind Valley. And I turned up, and it's this amazing event. There's all these people there who, from all walks of life, doing all these amazing things. I'll be honest, people like that I hadn't really encountered en masse before. And a lot of them go to Burning Man, and it's that kind of vibe. It's sort of conscious, but very varied.
Conscious stroke unconscious.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's always some of those, but
yeah.
But just people who are not the run of the mill people.
Yeah.
Just the normal people that I'd always sort of hung around with in the past, and it was amazing because everyone was so different, and there were people wearing crazy outfits and nobody cared, and someone would just be dancing in the corner and just be like, everyone was just being how they wanted to be, and they were encouraging each other to just be how they wanted to be. And so that was a real eye-opening experience, because I thought, wow, there are actually people in the world who are really comfortable being themselves, and are also really happy for me being how I'm being. And so that really helped me come out of my shell. And then because I connected with so many of those people, I then became more part of the online community. And then as I went through that process, people who used to be my friends years ago just dropped away. There was no arguments, there was no fallouts, but I feel like when we're our true selves, what happens is people who are not energetically aligned with us, and they're not aligned with where we're at, they will go, and then we call in people who are more aligned. So even in the last 6 months, I've had many people unfriend me from Facebook, but that's great, because I've had a ton more people connect with me and tell me how much they love my content, and my Instagram following has doubled, and everything has just been beautiful. So I encourage anybody to just connect with people who they feel are more on their wavelength, and that's a really big factor. So yes, do small steps and they will build. It's like anything, even with health. You can't go from being unhealthy to being healthy in a weekend. It takes little changes over time, and then 6 months down the line, you feel like a different person. And I'm a different, like, people from a few years ago have said to me, I don't even recognize you.
But that's
they say it like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you've changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm like, and do you know what I say when people say that? When people say, oh, you've changed, I say, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really baffles them, because they don't know what to say.
Absolutely.
But that's just what happens. And again, it comes down to a mindset. My mindset is, or the way I view the world is, people come and go in our lives. Like the whole idea that we have to, for example, stay friends with people from school, that's just a conditioned belief. I've had people say to me, oh yeah, but I'm staying friends with them because I can't, because I've known them for so long. Those are all just beliefs. When you understand that, people come and go, and everything is just energy, and
it's like
people will come in and out of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a toxic family member as well. I'm fortunate I don't have any, but it's if there's a toxic family member who's draining your energy and constantly bringing you down, you're well within your right to just walk away, and it doesn't matter if they're family. It's it's just another, like you say.
Absolutely. But people will say things like, oh yeah, but you can't, because that's your sister. That you can't, you can't not spend time with her. You can't. All these shoulds and shouldn'ts and cans and can'ts are all just conditioned beliefs. They're all everything is conditioned beliefs. And I think the thing is that we've also been conditioned not to feel, and to be afraid of unpleasant feelings. So what happens is, if I, for example, say no to someone and they react in a negative way, I'm not actually afraid of them, of what they're saying. It's the feelings. It's the feelings that we want to avoid. So when I remember when I was a people pleaser, and I used to sort of maybe try and say no to something, and somebody would, get funny with me. It felt horrible. Like I felt this kind of sinking in my stomach, like, oh, and it was that feeling that I was afraid of. Whereas now I understand that feelings are always going to be there. If a friend messages me today and says, I can't be friends with you anymore, I'm not going to feel nothing, because I'm human. So I'm going to have a feeling, and it's not going to be a pleasant feeling. However, I understand that that's just the language of the body. That's just energy. That's just an emotion. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
And so I will allow that feeling. I will process it. But then my mindset is, well, it's just not meant to be at this point. And that's okay. They can let them move on to where they're more aligned. And then I'll just carry on doing my thing. And so, it really is a gradual process, I think, of a few things. But yeah, definitely just understanding this stuff and having the awareness in the first place is the first step. Because I know people who say, oh, I'm not a people pleaser. And I'm thinking, you are. And I know, because I've done it. I've done it my whole life. So I see, this is the advantage of having gone through so many experiences in my life, good and bad, is I can relate to all of it. I see through all of it, because I've done it.
Absolutely. And of course, when you do step into your authentic self, and you do speak your truth, and you do live with that courage, it inspires others to do the same. So that's the other offshoot of it. And I just think as well that, we, like you said earlier, when we're not our authentic self, not only do we betray ourselves, but we betray everyone else in the world, because we all have a piece of the puzzle. So we all need you to be the best version of you. We all need for me to be the best version of me. All right, we're not perfect, but we also betray the creative force that created us in our own individual way. And, so.
Yep. And the soul knows it. This is why we feel it. We just feel it. And it doesn't feel good to not be our true self and to not express ourselves.
Yeah.
And, we know.
Yeah. Well, just one thing, I could talk all day about all this stuff, but let's just talk about the New Agers and some of these, because as I said off air, this channel is very much exposing the New Age, and some of these. There's been a bit of disappointment from your end as well as me. Where are all these spiritual gurus right now?
Yes, it's been. I say 2020 is the year of it. Well, it's 2020 vision, right? It's the year of unveiling. And we're seeing many things being unveiled, many things. But one of the things we're seeing is like, who's truly conscious and spiritual, and actually who's not. And there are many people who are, self-proclaimed spiritual leaders and gurus who have kind of are kind of not really speaking out about what's actually happening. And look, this applies to leaders, all sorts of people who have big influence on social media, you kind of particularly the personal development community, I think is even worse. It's like everyone is in denial.
Right. Yeah.
And no one's speaking about the reality of what's actually happening. And then you have people who are, all these super spiritual people, who are either in denial or are of the opinion that you have to only be sunshine and rainbows and butterflies and love and light, and you can't. So this is what I've really experienced myself. And so you can be both. You can be a warrior and speak your truth and be out there kind of like, fighting, and also have the love and light
Yeah.
within you. And I actually think we need both.
Yeah.
I think it's ideal to have both.
Yeah. It's this whole pseudo spirituality which has been created through dark Luciferians as the new religion, whereby they want to knock out that very thing. They want to knock out that action, you know, the warrior type. Just if you focus on too much negative, you'll draw it in. No, what you resist persists, right? It's a complete deception. And
yes.
it's been interesting seeing all these, or not seeing all of these gurus and you know, very well-known gurus as well that are just, I mean, I think a lot of it's cowardice as well. I think, you know, a lot of this new age spiritual stuff is, they're hiding because it's kind of cowardice. It's easier just to hide behind love and light and pretend that you're doing something.
Yeah, it's spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's total bypassing. I mean, look, I know someone who's a well, they call themselves a spiritual coach, and they are all about just high vibe. It's like everything's high vibe, and I asked them, like, why are you not speaking out? Like, why are you not addressing, you know, because they're confident. It's not like they have a, you know, confidence problem or anything. And they said to me, oh no, I'm only focused on the light. We shouldn't focus, and they genuinely think, you know, we shouldn't focus on the bad. If we just focus on the good, everything's going to be fine. And I don't think so. I think we have to acknowledge all. There is much darkness in the world. If we don't acknowledge it, there's darkness within us and within the world, within everything, and there's lots of light. So if we don't acknowledge it, we're just denying it. It's just another version of denying and bypassing, and humans are very good at doing that. But, you know, it's all well and good wearing, you know, the gear and the feathers and doing all that. I know a lot of these people that do this.
Yeah, that's why I don't live in Tulum.
And they won't even have a conversation about anything that's going on. It's like, no, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. That's not healthy for the collective, but it's also not healthy for them, because it's another version of denial. It's another version of not, you know, really looking at the things that need to be looked at. And I've also had several people say to me, you should just stick to the stuff you were doing before. Because before this year, I was more, if you look at my content and stuff, I was more about health and
not Billy Gates,
because I wasn't having to, there wasn't a reason for me to, you know, I've spoken out about the pharmaceutical industry. That's always been a bit of a thing, but you know, I haven't really had to look at that really dark stuff until this year, and now I have, and I've been sharing about it. And I also share positive stuff. But I've had several people tell me I shouldn't be sharing it. I should just stick to what I was doing before.
Right.
And just stick to being. One friend actually messaged me and said, "You're a really loving, compassionate person. I don't understand why you're doing all this stuff."
Through love and compassion.
I know. This is the irony. It is through love and compassion, like actually fighting for people's rights, fighting for freedom, exposing what lurks in the darkness is out of love.
Yeah.
And I think it's essential. And I think, but again, we have to have that balance. Like, we don't want to be like, you know, cruel and negative and stuff, but exposing the bad things that are happening it has to come out. And we need to, you know, maintain love and compassion, but it's got to get out there.
Yeah, exactly. And sitting under a tree doing gong baths is not going to take down a death cult. So
yeah, you can't just meditate. Like, I actually know someone who said if we all just meditated, this would get better.
Oh, don't.
And they believe it. I think they believe it. But we have to have both. And look, I went to sound healing the other night because it's good for me. But then the next day I'm online.
Yeah.
About how corrupt Bill Gates is.
Yeah, I call it streetwise spirituality, and I think, yeah, it's taking action, and I just feel like I feel like courage is the highest form of love, and I feel like that's what this new age pseudo spiritual scene lacks. It lacks any kind of courage to, as you say, face the darkness. And yeah, I think it's the only way out is through both. We've touched on it today, through your own life and as a collective. And so, yeah, I think you've got a really good balance there. And yeah, just kind of embodying that kind of warrior or warrior-esque spirit right now is really important, while you maintain the love and light and the sound baths every other day or something.
Yeah, it's like, but that to me is just it's self-love, it's self-care, and it's helping me to keep my vibration high. So I think there's this myth that if you look at anything dark, you're going to lower your vibration, and then that's going to be a really bad thing. Like, no, like you can do both.
Yeah.
And again, but again, this all comes down to this. It all comes down to societal conditioning, doesn't it? Like, if you're in a box. If you're spiritual, if you're super conscious, you have to be this way.
Yeah.
And just, meditate and be love and light and sweet and everything.
Drink
smoothies. You've got to do all that, but you can't be bold. Don't speak out. Don't say anything that's going to upset people.
Yeah.
It's just the box that people get put in, and you can be anything you want to be. You can be any way that you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important this year and going forward in the next few months, particularly, that more people understand that. And actually, if you feel unable, to look at dark stuff and to talk about it, then there's something to address within you. I mean, look, I've seen my fair share of, documentary films and videos about all the awful stuff that's going on, and it's not nice to see, but it's okay. Yeah. It's happening, so denying it isn't going to make it go away.
No.
It's like anything. If you deny it, it doesn't make it cease to exist. So we need to see it, acknowledge it, and but also do things to keep ourselves well and to keep our vibration high, because otherwise we can descend into not being our best self. And I'm actually seeing this quite a lot. I've got a few friends, a few contacts who have been telling me that they are up, they're not sleeping because they're researching and they're online all the time, and so they are experiencing, they're not feeling very well, they're not feeling great, they're feeling burnt out, they're not sleeping very much, they're on their screens super late at night. And look, we've all done it.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe they're not eating as healthily as they could, and they're kind of burning themselves out for the greater good. But you do actually have to look after yourself in order to keep your vibration high. And that happens from self-love and self-care. You keep yourself healthy in your mind and body. And look, everything over the last 6 months is designed to make us ill. So we're battling that. We're actually battling that as well.
Yeah.
Not only have we got to share the truths, keep ourselves healthy and high vibe, but we've got all these lockdown measures and everything else, which are it's the perfect recipe for mental and physical illness.
And it goes to show how incredible humans are, and our resilience as well. So
absolutely, wonderful. Very powerful.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you've got to go. So just before we kind of plug out, just where can people find you, your work? And I know you've got a course coming up. Maybe you want to tell people.
Yeah, I've got a few things. So I'm always evolving. So I have my website, which is laurajanebolton.com, and that's really just about my health coaching. So people that are interested in that can have a look.
So that goes into diet, inner work. There's different.
It's everything. I do everything. So all my work is actually based on something I call the 5 connections, which is 5 different areas where we need strong connections in order to be really healthy. So one is connection to self, the other is connection to other people, then there's connection to our natural diet and nutrition, connection to environment, natural environment, and then also to movement. So it's completely holistic. It's mind, body, spirit, and it's looking at all different things within those areas. So I tend to work more with people around either gut issues or things like stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety is a big problem, and it's something that I know a lot about. So so that's really for my one-on-one work. And then for everything else, Instagram is the best place really to find me, because I have a link in my bio which has links to basically all of the other things. So I have this course which coming up, which is 20 ways to feel better in 5 minutes. So that's really about processing our emotions, but also raising our vibration. So not bypassing, it's processing, which is super important, but also keeping our spirits high. And there's a link to that in the Instagram bio. And I share a load of, most of the stuff I'm sharing is through Instagram and Instagram stories.
Sure.
At the moment. Yeah.
Sure. And your podcasts are on.
Oh yeah, my podcast. I forgot I've got a podcast.
I'll just think for you, don't worry.
Doing too many things. Yeah, my podcast, Be More Human.
Are you on YouTube as well, or is it just on Apple?
I've got a few videos on YouTube, but they're just ones that are more linked to specific content that I've done. But it's not a big channel for me. I don't put much on there. I think I've only got like 3 videos or something on there, so it's not a big thing. But basically anything I do have, there's links to in my bio in Instagram.
All right. Well,
including the podcast.
All right, great. Well, I'll put all your links in the description below. So check out Laura's work. Fantastic guest. Thank you for your time. And
You're welcome.
we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.